Hi, so this is part 2, and I haven't recorded a video this long before, so I did not know my phone was gonna get low in battery. So anyway, was it okay stopping point? Those were our main favorites that we had. We have a few more we're going to talk about that we had together as favorite films for this year, and then we'll talk about ones we had that each of us saw the other didn't see, and a few hidden gems. So I'll go ahead and finish my train of thought with Spider-Man. You can skip ahead a couple minutes if you don't want any spoilers. So I really loved seeing the other Spider-Men come back and the ways that their characters were incorporated. And I liked seeing Tobey Maguire getting to work. And someone commented that he actually doesn't wear the spider suit very much. Like, he actually is more comfortable as Peter Parker than Spider-Man. And I thought that was really interesting as well. But seeing him as the older Spider-Man, in that, and obviously not that old, but having that kind of role of really encouraging the others was actually really sweet and really powerful. And I actually did love the redemptive arc that they gave the villains. I thought that was really powerful, and that hope that each villain could be redeemed. I think that's something that we need to see, not just a story where the villain is shown to be, oh, they weren't really that bad, I don't like those kinds of stories. What I like is a story of a villain who is given a chance to start over. And so those are the stories that I really love. And so I really enjoyed that about this movie too. Yeah. So with that, we'll go ahead and move on to a few other ones that we liked. So you can go ahead and talk about Rocks.
Oh, okay. Yeah. This is Rocks is it was a British import that came out on Netflix like way back in like January or February of 2021, and I remember seeing the Metacritic, this Metascore was like a 96 or something like that, and so it was really, really. I was like, whoa, that's gonna be a must see, and it really is. I mean, if you haven't, I think going into it not knowing anything about it is perfectly a good way to approach it, because it's such a raw, powerful, intimate story. Again, kind of like Nomadland, where it feels very lived in. There's the girl whose nickname is Rox has to take care of her younger brother. Her mom kind of like basically abandons them, but they're also kind of an immigrant family in London. So there's just this beautiful, like relationship with her friends, and like her friends' families kind of inviting her in, but then she's kind of emotionally volatile because she's basically had to become a mother at like 15 or something, to care for her little brother. And I mean, it's sad at times, but it's very raw and beautiful. It kind of reminded me a little bit of the Florida Project, which was my film of the year, when it came out several years back, I think 2017. So having, I just, that idea of like adolescence interrupted, but the way that she's able to still like, embrace the love of her friends, and kind of like find her own identity, and eventually be able to accept help, because that's the one thing, social services comes in, they're going to split us up, right? So there's a lot of, there's a conversation about that too, and the way that there's, can be some injustice in that system. But they do a really good job of grounding it in these characters in this emotional center. And it's just, I mean, it's just absolutely heartbreaking, but also heartwarming. It's just a very emotionally complex film, and it's not exactly what you might expect with this kind of movie. So that's definitely what I would consider a hidden gem, but it was also a top tenner for me. So yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, the resilience that character has to display going through these things, and having to fight and having to find safe people to help her walk through that was really powerful. Again, like, we're looking at all these themes of community and having people that she couldn't have survived this on her own. And so I think that's another powerful part of it is, even as you see someone who's struggling, to be able to even look for those people in your path that the Lord has put there, that maybe you get to be an encourager to, and you get to be able to help in a way that isn't enabling, but is actually giving the gifts that you have for someone else.
Yeah. And another movie that nobody saw, King Richard. This was one of those simultaneous HBO Max theatrical releases, and I don't know how many people watched it on streaming, because we saw it on HBO Max. We'd be like, we need to go to the theater to see this, but if you're expecting a traditional sports biopic, it's about Venus and Serena Williams, but it's more about their father, whose name is Richard. And so it's kind of Will Smith is this kind of like, you know, he's kind of a rough and tumble gritty dude. Like he's ready to like fight for his family, like, but he's also, you know, very like, you know, like he won't let his daughters, you know, he's very strict. Like he won't let Venus and Serena celebrate their success because he believes that they're gonna get too big of a head and an ego. And so it's really his story in some ways of finding this balance, and like, you know, their mother kind of saying, hey, you know what, let them enjoy this. Like he was so committed to like saying that we have to, you know, we're going to make the greatest tennis stars of all time. And the complexity, emotional complexity of the character in the way that he has good intentions, and, you know, obviously without him they never would have risen to the level of success that they have. You know, but there is still there were some things that he had to overcome in his own heart and his own mind in terms of the way that he thought things should be, right? Like, oh, a manager, like, we're not going to go with this manager because of this. Like, you know, he would find things to dislike about, you know, the people who were going to, you know, coach them and manage them. And he eventually had to like release some of that. You know, and it's just a really, like, the tennis scenes are really riveting, well shot. And just in terms of the emotional investment and like just like the quality of the filmmaking and the heartfeltness of the story, like it's one of the best sports movies I've seen in recent years, and it just barely missed my top 10.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's something that I just loved it. You know, I mean, and again, there's a community aspect to it. There's a familial, you know, it's about family. You know, there's this one scene where he gets the whole family to watch. I think isn't it Cinderella, or
I
is
think
it?
so. Yeah,
Yeah,
I think so.
you know, they watched it on VHS, and then he goes, "What did you learn from this movie?" And the girls answer him, and he's like, "That basically you weren't paying attention." And he's like gonna make him watch it again, you know. And then like the mom like is like, you know, chastising him for it, you know. But it's just, you know, that kind of like rigid, like where he's like he wants it hit done his way. But you know, he comes to that realization that he has to let things go. And I mean, you know, Will Smith might win an Oscar for this, and I mean, it's his best performance that he's given in a movie, I think, hands down, because he's so, I mean, other than, you know, Fresh Prince, which will always be my favorite. That's a TV show, but yeah, I mean, I just think he's just so good in this. I mean, and you know, this is a movie that's going to have lots of Oscar nominations, and deservedly so. I mean, you know, it does still follow some of the traditional playbook, but I mean, the fact that this is a true story, and that the Williams sisters were involved in producing it and stuff like that, and that they were able to show their father in a way that where he wasn't a monster, but he wasn't, you know, a saint either. You know, there was a lot of, you know, I think there was some indication that he was, you know, he was cheating or sleeping around or something like that, you know. And I mean, so the complexity of that character is given the full weight. It's definitely one of the best movies of the year, and you know, you should totally check it out if you have HBO Max and you haven't caught it yet. It's definitely one to have on your radar.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's not too much more for me to say. I think you covered it really well. But there were definitely moments where I was like, ooh, like, is he going to be like that, push that hard? You know, I was almost uncomfortable. But I think they managed to skirt that line of like, okay, like he's learning some lessons too about how to motivate these girls, and they really want it. You know, and I think that that's important too. And I think there's something really powerful about a parent who's willing to fight on behalf of the things that their kids want to do. And there's also, you know, a point where, you know, they're having to be careful as a parent that their kids, you know, want it too. And I think that that's where those two things came together, where the passion that the girls had for the sport was equal to the passion their dad had maybe in pushing them to these places. And he was willing to fight really hard. And so I think that resilience, that willingness to work really hard for something is really good. I think a lot of times we see these movies where these naturally talented people just seem to rise to the surface without really having to fight to be there. And I think as a songwriter and an artist, that I think it's important for me to see these movies of people having to work really, really hard to get there, and know that perhaps is why you'll have the character to handle the spotlight when you get there. And the father actually didn't want to push them too soon into that spotlight. He wanted them to get their education. He wanted them to learn. He didn't want his daughters to be there too young, where they were too impressionable and too easily pulled into like a partying kind of lifestyle. And so I think that's one thing this movie illustrates is is that amount of fighting that you have to do to get what you're passionate about, and to be able to do that not in a striving kind of way, but in a dedicated kind of way. And so I think showing the amount of practice, showing the amount of struggle is a really important element in any biopic about someone who has made it in something they're passionate about.
Yeah. Why don't you go ahead and hit the next one?
So I actually did really like Respect, and the reason I liked it didn't really come until toward the end of the film. And so this is spoilers if you haven't seen it, but they really have a moment in this film where she encounters God. She encounters forgiveness, Aretha Franklin, that she encounters that forgiveness. And so you see her make a lot of mistakes. You see her with guys that treat her poorly. There's some sex in this film. And there's a lot of pain. There's even a scene where she is abused, and that haunts her for the rest of her life. And so the arc of Aretha Franklin in this film is really powerful, because ultimately there's a moment of receiving forgiveness and receiving grace, of like God finding her, where she realizes that like it wasn't even that she was looking for God or pursuing God, but God was pursuing her. And so the fact that the makers of this film were willing to give that kind of stage to her faith, and in fact the faithfulness of God in a film like this, was really powerful and really moving to me. And so it wasn't just that she was a talented person who was thrust into the spotlight, but that ultimately wasn't a source of life, but God was. And that what she was needing was not more fame and more stage or even more respect, but she needed forgiveness. She needed peace. And so I think that being the emotional heart of the film is what made me really love it.
Yeah, I mean, Jennifer Hudson really knocked out of the park in terms of her acting. In many ways, it is a traditional. It kind of follows the traditional music biopic, arc, but that redemptive angle and the ability of the filmmakers to not want to shy away from her Christian faith, and kind of how that imbued her with this power later in life. I mean, and it ends with that Amazing Grace concert in the church, and I mean that's just. That's the moment right there. That's one of the most extraordinary moments in the history of popular music. And so, I mean, I think that they did a really good job of conveying the drama of that, but the beauty of it too. So, yeah, absolutely.
And she was spectacular in that role. I
mean,
the costumes were beautiful, and she looked amazing, but her voice was just really powerful. She really did Aretha Franklin justice in that role.
Well, I think that, yeah, absolutely. And I think that, she's not really in the awards conversations at this point, and I'm not really sure why. I think it's just kind of it's a very embarrassment of riches this year.
Yeah.
So we'll see. Maybe she gets an Oscar nod for this, but it's well deserved if she does. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So Kyle's going to go ahead and talk about his picks that were ones I didn't see, just because I tend to not have as much of a capacity to watch super, super emotionally intense films. And so some of these have those moments of intensity, but the overall tenor of the film being really, really intense for me is sometimes just something, because I feel things so deeply already, I just can't subject myself to and then kind of bounce back from. So
yeah,
I think that these, especially The Father that he's going to talk about first, like that movie, I might be interested in seeing just because I did have a relative with dementia that having to walk through. But that pain is also kind of fresh, and so I wasn't sure I could handle it, but he's going to go ahead and talk about his favorites of the year that we didn't see together.
Yeah, so it's funny you said that, because I would say of these ones I'm going to talk about, The Father is the one that I really would like to watch with you at some point, because Anthony Hopkins got his Oscar. I said that was going to go to Chadwick Boseman, like a posthumous Oscar, and people were kind of like a little riled up that Anthony Hopkins got it, and including, I think in some ways Anthony Hopkins himself was pretty shocked. But I mean, watching this movie, it's hard to deny that he didn't deserve it. Like, I mean, for an actor that old to be able to give this kind of emotional range of his performance, it's tragic. It's frightening. This Florian Zeller, I think you pronounce his name. He made a stage play, and about the and I think it was based on his own life and experience with his own father about the ravages of dementia. But the way that the script is constructed is and it won Best Adapted Screenplay because he adapted it from his play. The way the script is constructed is so brilliant. It almost defies words. Like, it's, until you see it, it's hard to fully encapsulate how much this movie put yourself in the headspace of someone who might be struggling with memory loss.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's he just pulls the rug out from under you again and again, because you really get in the headspace of this man and you think you know him, and all of a sudden his daughter is this other woman who's played by a different actress. I mean, Olivia Colman, and then I forget who plays it in the other the other version, but like essentially you have same characters that are coming into his life. You're not my daughter. Yes, I am. Blah blah blah. This and that and the other, and you'll have whole scenes that are played out with this different actor. So you're kind of going back, and you start getting agitated, and you get angry. That's not her. That's not him. I don't know who this person is. This isn't my house. Like, and I mean, you feel angry. You feel his anger. Like it's an extraordinarily empathetic movie. I don't know quite how he did it, but to put yourself in that headspace. And I think the production design, kind of like there's subtle changes in the rooms where these things are happening, and it pretty much all takes place in his apartment, almost the entire movie. And when you get to the end and everything kind of all comes together, there's this moment of clarity of like, oh, that's where they were going with this. But I mean, you're never, it's from moment to moment. Like, rarely is a film this unpredictable in terms of the way it's going to like bait and switch you on that. And again, it's not manipulative. It's not gimmicky. It's very rich, very well defined, but the whole point is that this is a hard disease to deal with for both the person who's going through it and their loved ones. And I think, I've heard people say like, this is the best depiction of dementia like ever put on screen, in terms of the accuracy of it, how it can be scary, the fear, the way that he lashes out. Anthony Hopkins is obviously, known for, Hannibal Lecter and things like that. So he still has that very frightening presence, but he's also very vulnerable. Like there's this scene where he just breaks down and just starts sobbing. And it's just like, it's just incredible. Like it's perfection. I mean, it's, Nomadland won Best Picture deservedly, but The Father is like right nipping on its heels. You know what I mean? Like, I would have been totally thrilled if this won Best Picture too. But it did come out in 2021, like February. But again, with that extended eligibility deadline, it counted as a 2021 movie, which is great because I can't stop talking about it and singing its praises. So just see it, and see it with someone so you can have a conversation. Like, that's why I want to watch it with you, because I saw it by myself and I was like trying to explain to you how extraordinary this movie is.
It sounds brilliant.
And it was hard to it's hard to articulate until you see it. And I don't want to give anything else away, but it's just, ooh, man, it's a knockout. Another one that's a complete knockout is the one that is probably going to win Best Picture, and it is getting on the top of most critics' lists, and that's The Power of the Dog. Jane Campion is known for the piano. Her last movie was called Bright Star in 2009, but she also did the Top of the Lake miniseries with Elizabeth, the gal from The Handmaid's Tale. I forget her name, but this is her first movie in like a really long time, and I mean, she came out swinging. This is based off of a novel from, I think, the 1960s, and it's essentially there's a rancher family in the early 1900s. It actually was shot in New Zealand because she's a native, a Kiwi or whatever you call them. But it's taking place in the American West. And there's just this, there's this savagery to this land, this emotional savagery that goes from the very first scene to the very last. And this is a movie that, Anna would have hated this movie, man, because I could not, like, I just remember, I was like, I had trouble breathing when I got to the end of this thing because it's so intense. And that's exactly what Campion intended, and everybody involved with this movie. I mean, Benedict Cumberbatch, I've always loved him as an actor, but this is just like, I just couldn't believe how messed up he is in this movie. Like, this is such a great performance. And then you have Jesse Plemons, Cody Smith McPhee might get an Oscar. He's been in things here and there. He was Nightcrawler in the newer X-Men movies. And then you have Kirsten Dunst as well. And so basically this family, he marries this woman, and then his brother kind of, hates this woman, and so I think there's some jealousy there, there's some spite, but there's also some emotional complexity beneath the surface. So he's just doing everything he can to terrorize this woman, and then he kind of takes the son under his wing, and so then she's all in distress because he's hanging out with her son a lot, and she's worried that he's going to, like, influence her son in a bad way, but he's like, wants to be independent. And so there's this, it's psychological warfare is what it is. And I mean, it's from beginning to end, first frame to last, just absolutely beautiful movie in terms of its production design, absolutely ugly and savage movie in terms of its character interactions. But there's just so much depth and complexity to this character, to Phil Burbank, who's Benedict Cumberbatch's character, and as the layers get revealed, there's even a little bit of empathy for him, and I think that speaks to the power of the performances and the writing, that there's a tragic hero, almost story to this, but at the end of the day, he is still a monster. So it's like, it's just that there's all these layers to it. And I mean, it's a Western, but it deals with, especially like toxic masculinity. And I mean, there's all of these elements, like what it means to be a man, from the very beginning. He's teasing her son because he sees him as too effeminate, like, or basically, like, using, gay slurs and stuff like that to like put this kid down. But then, as the layers get revealed, there's more to it than even just that. So, without giving everything away, it's a knockout of a movie. Like, you just go and just like, all right, I need a few minutes to recover from that masterpiece, but a masterpiece it most certainly is.
You were saying the score
yeah.
was really good.
Oh yeah, Johnny Greenwood. He also did Licorice Pizza, I think, because he's been working with Paul Thomas Anderson for some time, and Licorice Pizza was a movie that I did not enjoy nearly as much. But yeah, I think Johnny Greenwood might get an Oscar for this, and I think he got an Oscar for There Will Be Blood. I mean, he's just an incredible composer, and when you hear his stuff, it doesn't sound like something that anybody else does. And I think he's a band frontman, but I'm not sure which band. And these band people that turn into composers, like Trent Reznor, too, they tend to have a really unique spin on things. And so I'm always excited when like a rock musician wants to start composing film, because I feel like they just start getting Oscars, and people love it. So The Green Knight is another one that was a very divisive movie, and in some ways I'm still divided about it myself. I mean, it's a movie that I just instantly know is just a completely kick-ass, wonderful, awesome, super cool, amazing movie. But it's also weird, it's also disturbing, it's also tragic. And this Arthurian legend has been adapted. David Lowery is definitely a risk-taking filmmaker, and this time the risk really paid off. I mean, I think that Dev Patel, is a true actor in this movie. I see him as a real true actor for almost the first time. I mean, he really gets this incredible performance out of him as Gawain, who has to go on this, epic quest to take down this thing called the Green Knight, this sort of really cool looking creature. I mean, the best comparison I can make is like Pan from Pan's Labyrinth, where or the faun, from Pan's Labyrinth, where it's like this really exotic blend of like CG and practical effects. And that's the movie as a whole. I mean, like from first frame to last, I cannot believe how cool this movie looks. Like, it is definitely one of the best looking films ever. I mean, and just especially in the fantasy realm, like the way that the colors sort of the muted cinematography, but then there'll be pops of color, and there's just so many scenes that are just absolutely intoxicating to watch. And again, the arc of the movie, I think the more you know about the Arthurian legend going in, the better you're gonna be able to make it through the movie. And I confess that there were long stretches of the movie and I just had absolutely no clue what was going on, but I didn't care, because the moment to moment acting and the moment to moment situations, scenery, all of that. Like it's just such a beautiful, haunting movie. And you know, it's more about the journey than it is the destination. And when you get to the end, you know, it kind of reframes everything in a really surprising way. And you know, I can't wait to watch it, you know, several more times to try and piece it together, because I feel like it's one of those movies where you really can, you know, it's not meant to be fully absorbed in one watch, and that's totally fine. You know, sometimes those experiences can be frustrating, but again, this one, it just did everything right. And I feel like you have to put some trust into a filmmaker, but the confidence, you know, to be like, I understand that this person is doing everything deliberately. Every choice is the choice that this filmmaker is trying to make, and trusting that, and being like, it's okay to just kind of give myself over to the magic of it all, really. And so like that's like definitely a movie I'd be going back to, like ever since I saw it. Like I'm still thinking, I still think about it like very regularly, and I'm just like, what was going on with that? Like, it's just enigmatic in a way that's irresistible, as opposed to, you know, closed off, because it's so, you know, some movies are just too confusing and too complicated, you know. And this one, for me, it skirts that line. I think a lot of people are going to see it and hate it, and probably have seen it and hated it, but it's definitely a critic movie. A lot of people like it critically, but it's also artsy fartsy. So I mean, you know, I personally think it rocks. So the other one is Pig, which is another one that kind of is a hidden gem. Nicolas Cage movie, but not a Nicolas Cage movie at all. Like this is a movie about grief, and about the way that forgiveness plays a part in that. I mean, it's a very sensitive, soulful movie. It's not violent, or, you know, I mean, basically you got this guy, he plays this truffle hunter, right? And his prize pig gets stolen. So he helps like the guy that goes and sells his truffles, you know, like they sort of team up, and they're trying to find his pig or whatever. And while they're doing that, they're learning a lot about each other. And this man's past is slowly getting unraveled as he sort of visits these people and talks to them, and is trying to figure out where he's, and they're like, don't I know you? And like, you know, he was this famous successful chef in the past. And so there's all these layers that come through from that, and you think that it doesn't really sound like a Nicolas Cage performance, and it's not, which is why it's so good. Like he's just absolutely incredible in this movie. I mean, he's got like this big beard, all this facial hair, but like he's able to just be very vulnerable in this film. And you know, like, you know, without giving too much away, that the climax of the movie is a dinner, you know. Like it's not a fight, it's not an argument, it's not a manipulation. It's, I'm going to sit down and make a meal for you, and when I make you this meal, you're going to understand my pain, you're going to understand my, I mean, it's so you, again, going back to that power of a community, where it's like, yeah, okay, we have a grudge, but we're going to sit down and eat together, and then we're going to talk, you know. Like, you know, so I mean, just, it's a very gentle, you know, it is heavy, but it's gentle in a way. And it's just like, I don't even know how you market a film like this, honestly, because it's just not anything like what you would expect, and I mean that in the very best way. So if you're into something that's a little emotionally heavy, but like just really powerful, and you like Nicolas Cage and you want to see him in a good movie for once, this is, you know, this is just about the best you're gonna find. So yeah, totally a top 10er for me as well.
All right. Well, I only have a couple that we didn't see together, just because my husband is such a movie buff that he's seen most of the ones.
I want to see these too. I do.
Yeah, and even the ones
you're talking about them.
Even the ones I was more excited about. I mean, he obviously went and saw with me, and we'll probably watch these. But I loved Come From Away, and we didn't really count Hamilton. At least Kyle didn't on his list as a full movie for the year when we did that, because it was a film stage production. But this one was actually filmed in 2021 on the anniversary of September 11th. And the premise of it is that all of these people end up stranded in Newfoundland because all of these planes are rerouted. So this tiny town has like all of these airplanes. It's just maxed out. So they have these people that need medical attention, that women that have babies that need diapers, and even some some animals, some gibbons that give birth, and so there's someone trying to take care of animals, someone trying to gather supplies and clothes, and so this whole community just sacrificially drops everything that they're doing. Even a bus driver strike ends so they can bus these people to the places they need to go. And all of these people's lives are just completely upended, but they embrace that challenge. And so you see the side of that, of all the logistical nightmares they have to endure to accommodate all these people and care for them. And yet the humility in which they embrace this thing that has been dropped into their laps. And they're like, these people have needs. We are going to take care of it. And you don't hear them complain. They feel overwhelmed at times, but they just say, this is a chance to love these people. And I just thought that was so powerful. And you see people's stories, like the pilot that knew somebody that died and one of the other pilots that died. And you see a woman who is looking for her son, who's a firefighter, trying to find news about him, who's a firefighter in New York. And so you see the ways that this kind of one thing that happened connects to all the events of September 11th as well. And during the end credits, you see pictures of the actor in the musical and the person who they were inspired by in real life. And so that even anchors it more in reality. And the songs are really good. They're really catchy. What's cool is the Newfoundland accent is portrayed. So you have all these people from there, and there's kind of an Irish kind of sound to the music. It's a small band, has a feel kind of like the one stage production that we saw here in Phoenix at the Phoenix Theater, of having that small band, having that kind of stringed instrument, kind of folk music kind of background to it. The vocal performances are all really good. It's super creative the way they stage it, because it's a small cast. So they have people playing multiple characters that will throw on an extra sweater or a hat or something, and they'll play somebody else with a different accent. But yet it's not hard to follow, which is really saying something. Okay. And so the staging is super simple, mostly just tables and chairs and stuff, but they managed to pull it off in a way that is really immersive and really empathetic as well. And I absolutely loved it. So that made it on my top 10 for sure.
Is that that's on Apple, right?
Yeah, Come From Away is on Apple. So if you get your Apple free trial, or even just pay the $6 or whatever it is to get a month worth, and watch Coda and watch Come From Away and watch Ted Lasso, which is, I made a post about it on my Facebook. Just an incredible series. Lots of language and other content, but the main character has such humility and kindness that I just love that.
Another great show about community.
Yeah.
The power of community. Absolutely.
And the other movie that I really liked is on Netflix. It's called Mixtape, and I really enjoyed the way that it was a very gentle story about a teenage girl whose parents died when she was very young, and she finds this mixtape that they made for her before they died, and the tape breaks as she's trying to listen to it. So she has to go and she has to find all of the songs. And so as she does this, she finds community. The record store owner and her next door neighbor who's her age, and a girl from school who's into music that's kind of a, scary, kind of outcast type person. And they all band together, become friends, and support her through that. And her grandmother, who's played by Julie Bowen, is just really trying to figure out how to deal with these cycles of generational things. She's afraid her granddaughter is going to make the same mistake her daughter made, because she had her daughter when she was a teenager. Her daughter had her granddaughter when she was a teenager. And so she's got all of this baggage and all this fear. She's working super hard to save money for her granddaughter's college. And so there's a moment of them having to kind of really see each other for the first time, really the grandmother to actually see her granddaughter when she's been working so hard for her. She hasn't really seen her. And there's a song, it's a little bit of a spoiler, but there's a song her parents wrote for her that her grandmother ends up showing her that she still has the tape for it. And she hears this song. And for me, as I've been going through my own healing journey of dealing with childhood trauma, it was just a really powerful moment just to let this song of kind of parental blessing just wash over me at the end, of like, you may make mistakes, but they don't define you. You're not a mistake. And like, just the healing power of music and the healing power of like blessing and of seeing each other and community. I just really thought it was a very sweet film. It was like an indie, a great gentle indie film for like teenagers and, families to watch together. So, I mean, there's definitely some choices that she makes in this movie that you're like, that could have been really dangerous for you. So, I mean, it's definitely not a family to let your teenagers watch on their own. It's a great family film to watch with them and discuss afterward. But I just thought it was really well done. It was very sweet. It was well filmed. It was competently done. And I just really, really enjoyed it. And I think it's great to have a good movie with a good heart that doesn't have to have a lot of objectionable content in it. Because I think that, there's a lot of movies on this list that you couldn't watch as a family together. And so to have a sweet film like this that does have that, I think was just such a special little gift to get to watch.
Yeah. What's next?
So yeah, we'll talk about a few of the hidden gems, movies that were maybe in our top 20 or just movies that flew under the radar a little bit. So you can go ahead and talk about those.
Yeah, we'll try and hit these pretty quick here.
Yeah.
There was a film that it was kind of a filmed stage production, but it also had some animation and some other original elements in it that I think made it, qualify as a film. Derek Delgadio's In and of Itself, which was Stephen Colbert actually and his wife Evie went and saw a show and said, people need to see this, and they said we want to finance and produce this so that people can see it. And I mean, it is Derek is part magician. He's an incredible storyteller. He really makes you see life from a different angle through his sort of presentation. There's just some really, really beautiful jaw-dropping moments in this film. And I think that, the Colberts obviously, saw something that was worth sharing. I mean, because I think it really is, you feel blessed to be a part of something like this, something that is this, that there's so much healing involved in the things that he's talking about. And, he shares stories from his own life, but so much of it is just like, and he'll even he had this scrapbook that like every audience member at all of his shows, got to, or the previous audience member from the previous show filled it out, and then they passed it on to the next people, and it was sort of this document of people's lives. So I think just, I don't know, really beautiful stuff in that. That's on Hulu, and that's well worth your time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I loved, we talk a lot about identity in these, the movies that we've talked about this year, and I think that one was very directly about identity. They all chose a label, like a word that kind of described them in some way, and so it was really kind of causes you to be a little bit more reflective about what would that label be for you. And so I think that this is a film that also, it's kind of like a mirror. It's kind of like looking at your own response to this and where do you find yourself. And so I think that as far as the power of cinema to be transformative for its watchers, I think that's what was so special about this, that it was great that they filmed this stage production.
Yeah. We saw this one on Amazon Prime. And as soon as I saw the concept, I thought we got to watch this because it has it's about cats, and I mean Anna's like the cat lady, so
the cat lady with no cats because I can't have them in this apartment.
Okay, yeah. So we watch things about cats instead, documentaries, and
the one about cats in Japan is amazing.
Yeah.
Anyway,
The Electrical Life of Louis Wayne. This is another Cumberbatch performance. Man, has he had a year, huh? Oh, he's just so good in this. It's just a really, really great story. So this guy, Louis Wayne, was a real life guy that became famous by painting pictures of cats. And he was trying to do portrait work, and he was just like, I just don't understand people. He was just kind of a quirky dude. And so he would draw pictures of, he would go to I don't know, dog shows or whatever, and paint things. And so he ends up making kind of a career out of it, but what makes the movie so fun is that he has to provide financially for all of his sisters. He's 6 sisters or whatever it is, or 5 sisters, and so there's just this big lovable family, and the head sister is because the parents aren't in the picture anymore, and so the head sister is kind of feel like she has to be the mother, and that's the actress is so good. Do you remember her name?
No.
Man. It was just it wasn't your traditional biopic. It really went to some really It was willing to be weird. It was willing to be idiosyncratic. You know, I mean, it kind of followed the basic biopic structure, but I feel like kind of like that one about the woman that was involved with the atom bomb, whatever
Oh
that one was.
yeah,
That
Radioactive.
Radioactive,
Yeah, it was.
which
It
was
was
also on
similar.
Amazon Prime. You know, kind of like that, where
Kind of experimental in the way it was
experimental,
filmed.
but
Yeah.
not like the Tesla movie, which is man, that was also on Prime, and that one was just a head scratcher. That was a weird movie and made no sense. But this one, I think, it has enough traditional kind of like trappings to it, to make it kind of almost like a feel good movie. I mean, for the most part, you know, his life has some tragedies in it. His wife, you know, gets cancer, and so there's this sort of beautiful like vulnerability to that, and you know, the way that they're living through this, you know, and embracing the time they have left together. And you know, basically, you know, people telling him, hey, you know what, don't worry about making money right now, just like spend the time you have with your wife before she dies, you know. And so, I mean, again, kind of this like this joyful like vibrancy for like you know, so the fact that tragedy helped mold him into the artist he became, you know, the way that art and tragedy and the way those things interact, very good. And the paintings are super cool, and I want to like look up more, you know. Over the end credits they'll show all the paintings, so that's on Amazon Prime, and that's just it's an easy recommendation. It's really delightful.
Yeah, and I think I always appreciate films that deal with mental illness and the ways that people struggle through that and try to find outlets. And so, I mean, The Sister deals with it, he does, and even just the ways that in that time period, people that were mentally ill were usually horribly mistreated. And so, the other thing that's interesting about this film is that he's one of the reasons cats are popular house pets, because they weren't really seen as pets; they were seen as mousers and animals with a job, and not something that you would have to really enjoy its presence with you in your home. So he was one of the reasons for that. His wife adopting a cat, and then him being inspired by this little creature and painting cats. And his paintings of cats are so whimsical and bizarre. And I mean, he was a strange guy, but it's definitely an interesting film about someone I knew nothing about. And so that was the other thing, was like discovering this thing that I like. This guy paints cats, and how have I never heard of him?
Oh yeah, and just totally. And you know, Europe was ahead of the curve on, they kind of domesticated cats, and then, you know, America, you know, kind of, as with a lot of things, kind of like, we should do that too, and we did.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about our favorite.
Yeah. So Barb and Star go to Vista Del Mar. It's kind of a guilty pleasure. And I will say, if you are single, this might not be the movie for you right now, because there is a lot of innuendo and some sexual content. They don't show anything. It's like, you know, raunchy PG-13. But if that's a sensitive area for you, then I would say to skip this one.
Think of it as like Austin Powers, like level of raunch meets
Napoleon Dynamite in terms of
Dynamite.
quirkiness,
Yeah,
small
maybe.
town people.
I don't even know how to describe this movie to someone other than you really should see it. And even if you hate it, you won't regret that you saw it.
But I enjoy seeing Barb and Star as like Midwestern sheltered women reacting to like a supervillain plot and to a crazy beach town. And
it's totally insane.
Yeah,
it's one of the wildest movies. I can't believe this got made, but I'm glad. There's a scene in the movie that, as soon as you see it, I'm not giving it away, but you'll say, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen. Like, this is the film moment of 2021. And I mean, I don't even need to tell you what it is, but when you watch the movie, you'll just be like, oh my gosh, that is the stupidest, most brilliant thing I've ever seen. Oh yeah, it's so good.
Oh yeah, and there's musical numbers. What's his name? The guy,
Jamie Dornan.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I just realized something. We forgot to talk about Belfast.
We did.
Yes, Jamie Dornan was in Belfast. I'm going to go ahead and take a second, because this is a far better film than Barb and Star, to talk about Belfast. Definitely in both of our top 10s, right? It was in your top 10?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It was, yeah.
Shot in beautiful black and white, except for the scenes where they're in the theater. And so it's showing the ways for Kenneth Branagh as like an autobiographical film, the way that film was magical and transported him to a different world. And the child at the heart of this movie, which is kind of Kenneth Branagh as a child, is dealing with the turmoil of kind of the Catholic Protestant English, you know, UK versus Ireland tension in North Ireland. And so at one point he was playing in the street with, trash can lid like a shield and a little sword, and suddenly his mother has that trash can lid shielding herself from rocks. And so it's this very gentle film about this struggle in terms of from his perspective, but yet there's some real danger, there's some real intensity, and yet this family bands together and supports each other. They support the father who's unwilling to kind of bow down to the kind of gangster type people that are trying to get him to hate the Catholic Irish people, and the grandparents live with them. And so there's all these incredible shots that just look like black and white photographs where they're in a courtyard and someone's hanging out the window here and hanging out the window here. And every shot is just immaculate, just perfection. It looks like a series of beautifully taken black and white photographs. And so loved it. Definitely top 10. Can't believe we forgot it. When I made a list, I just forgot to put it on our agenda. Yeah. So I'm so glad I remembered because as soon as I said Jamie Dornan. Yeah, because he's in it too, and sings in that just like he does in Barb and Star. Strangely enough,
he does. He's a good singer.
But I'll let you go ahead and talk about Belfast as well. Then I'll get back to Barb and Star.
It's sort of like that. He's breaking out of his 50 Shades of Grey kind of typecast or whatever.
Not so much with Barb and Star.
Not so much with Barb. Well, yeah.
It's comedic though.
But oh man, that musical number in Barb and Star is like so good. And apparently you said he like ad-libbed that scene where he rips his shirt off and
so that's not Belfast. That's
no, that's not Belfast.
Okay,
we're back on Barb and Star.
Talk about Belfast and then we'll
It's really, what can I say? I mean, I don't know what else to add. It's really good. Branagh as a filmmaker, I think the more he gets personal, the better his movies are. So, he kind of makes some commercial stuff. He did the Cinderella live action. He did the first Thor movie. He did Murder on the Orient Express. He's known for his Shakespeare adaptations and his acting. He was in Tenet. He was really good in Tenet. But, this is certainly probably the best movie that he's made as a director. And I think part of the reason is because it's so personal and he was able to get some incredible actors. Oh my gosh. Yeah. So, I mean, this is kind of a front runner for a Best Picture and for obvious reasons. And, I'm going back to Barb and Star. It's not a front runner for anything, but, I mean, for a while, Barb and Star was higher on critics' lists on Metacritic's weighted average than Belfast was. So the people who love Barb and Star are like, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen, and other people are probably a bit of a head scratcher. I mean, is it technically a good movie? Maybe, I don't know. I mean, but people seem to really love it, and it's definitely a cult classic. I mean, it's kind of like Napoleon Dynamite. Is Napoleon Dynamite technically a good movie? I don't know, but I love it.
Yes, it is.
All right. Well, I love it, so I don't really care. I don't really care if it's technically, and so I feel the same way about Barb and Star. Like, yeah, it's an easy recommendation as, if you like Austin Powers and you're fine with that level of raunchiness, because it definitely gets raunchy, but man, a lot of the best funny stuff about it is the innocent kind of just wide-eyed wonder of these women getting thrown into this crazy situation. And Kristen Wiig is just so good. I mean, because she plays multiple characters in the movie. I'll just say that. And when you sometimes you're like, oh my gosh, that was Kristen Wiig. Like she's a chameleon. I mean, she's a really, really good actress. So I mean, props to her. And I know she co-wrote it too. So it's a comedic gem. I mean, it really is just not unlike any other type of comedic film that you've seen.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And I mean, the musical number, like the one that Jamie Dornan does, he's like singing to the seagulls on the beach, and it's just so stupid. It's kind of like that. Like Napoleon Dynamite is funny because it's so dumb that it's just hilarious. So if you like movies that are like so dumb they're brilliant, this is Barb and Star.
It's like it's so stupid that it somehow revolves itself back around to being brilliant.
Yeah, I don't know how it does it, but it does.
That's the only thing I can say. Like it's genius, and it's also so dumb. And that I'm okay with that.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it was a lot of fun.
All right, so I know we have an engagement.
Yes, we do.
Up.
So we'll go ahead and I'll talk about Vivo and Flora and Ulysses real quick, and then you can hit the last two real fast. Yeah. So another movie that I feel like did not get enough attention as what it deserved is another one by Lin-Manuel Miranda. I mean, he's had an incredible year. Kyle just
Entertainer
keeps saying,
of the Year.
Yeah,
Entertainer
exactly.
of the Year for sure.
Vivo is kind of it's a very sweet story about a kinkajou, which kind of is like a monkey, but it's not a monkey, it's like a rodent. I don't know. Rodent monkey creature that bonds with this older man and then has to go on this crazy adventure to deliver this man's love song to his love. And so he meets up with this little girl who's also kind of an outcast, and she's got a great musical number. And so with the songs by Lin-Manuel Miranda in this film, it just elevates it to a whole other level. I just think his work is incredible. And the thing I also loved about this film is these beautiful 2D animation scenes, often during musical numbers.
That's right.
That is why I feel like that elevates it beyond your typical animated movie. Even though maybe the story itself is, like a solid 7 kind of movie, those scenes are just gorgeous, and the music is really good. And Lin-Manuel Miranda gets to be at the center of a movie playing this character who is fighting fear. You have this main character, this girl who is so bold and so just brave to the point of being foolhardy. And then you have Vivo, the kinkajou, who he knows he's small, he's fragile, and he's having to fight his fear. And I think that for me is the heart of the movie, is him moving past the fear to fight for something bigger than himself. And so that's what I really enjoyed about that film.
Yeah, and I think that I'm kind of losing my train of thought here. Yeah, it's just I one thing I was thinking is, like, why a kinkajou? And I'm thinking, okay, Lin-Manuel Miranda wanted a name of an animal that sounded good, and kinkajou do, like that like the opening like rap of the movie that he does. Yeah. It's really good, but I'm also just like, man, because I'm a kinkajou, and it's just like it's just like that's the only reason it's a kinkajou is because he wanted something that sounded really good rolling off the tongue, and you could rhyme with a lot of stuff, and that's totally fine. I mean, I think it's just kind of like, it's funny. It's funny that that's what he came up with, but the movie just works. It's not going to be one of the highest rated animated films to come out of 2021 or anything like that, but I mean, it's another Netflix. I feel like I got to give some props to Netflix for taking on these projects. I mean, Mitchell's versus the Machines, Klaus, from a few years back, Vivo. I mean, there's others, like I Lost My Body is a really good one. Like, if you're looking for
super creepy, but yeah,
if you're looking for some good, that's more of an adult animated film. But if you're looking for some good animation,
Extraordinary, April and the Extraordinary.
Yeah, that wasn't a Netflix film.
That wasn't a Netflix film, though. Okay.
Yeah, but they I feel like they're willing to take risks and give some interesting. That other one, the one about the girl that turns into a cat. That was a Netflix one. That was a weird one.
She was obnoxious, but
that was that was like more of a Japanese animation.
Yes.
Anyway, I just wanted to say that Netflix has kind of become a cool place for animation. They're willing to take some risks and fund some projects that
series too
are really cool. Yeah, and series. Yeah, we could talk about Maya and the Three. That was a really excellent series on Netflix. Yeah. All right.
Oh yeah, and
let's
then
talk about a few more.
Yeah, Flora and Ulysses. That's another one that I think was really fun, and it's great to have a family film that families can enjoy together and talk about. And the squirrel looked adorable. It's very witty. The main character was great. That actress did a really good job. She was able to hold that film. And there's some fun little comic references.
I'd say anything with Ben Schwartz in it can't be all bad.
As a fun fact, if you're familiar with the DuckTales reboot, every one of the Ducklings, the voice actor is in this film. Ben Schwartz and Danny Pudi and Bobby Moynihan and what is her name? I'm gonna space that plays Webby. Anyway, that's kind of a fun fact about this film too.
That's weird.
It's super weird.
But we talk about this with Disney sometimes. Like, we're like, oh, like while they had these actors, like for this project, they're like, hey, can you come over here and record these voices? Like, we talk about that with Jane Lynch too, because it's like, she was in Wreck-It Ralph, and then they're like, hey, can you do a voice in Big Hero 6? It's like they kind of just are like, here, we'll give you a little more. So Disney likes to reuse their actors in multiple projects. So, but it is weird that there's just that many DuckTales people in this strange little movie about a superhero squirrel.
Yeah. So it's a great film. I really enjoyed it.
It's super, if you're looking for a family film too. It's a Disney Plus original, so you could check it out on there.
It's very cartoony. It's almost like the cat, especially. There's a little eye rolling kind of about the cat being just completely ridiculous. But the squirrel works. The squirrel is never over the top. Super charming, super funny. The stuff that he like types on the typewriter is just hilarious. Like, they find like poems by the squirrel.
Oh yeah,
it's so funny.
Well, I'm glad too that the squirrel doesn't talk.
Yeah,
I mean, that would have ruined it, I think. So, it's an impressive CGI. And it's just kind of, Disney has released a lot of these movies straight onto Disney Plus, and they kind of just sort of are there, and people, it's like, are people watching this? Do people know about that this movie exists? So check out some Disney Plus originals, but that one in particular stood out as being a really great family film. Yeah. I have a couple of ones I thought I would want to mention. They're Netflix. So Netflix released a movie every single week in 2021, and for every Power of the Dog, you had a Red Notice or a oh man, there were some bad ones.
Red Notice was spectacularly mediocre. That was
that's
so forgettable.
So I mean, it's very interesting. Their shotgun approach to releasing, and and then you got something like Don't Look Up, which is both good and bad, and is very divisive. But the thing is, like, that gets a movie like that, even if the critics didn't love it, gets a lot of social media and think pieces, and like, oh, what is this about? Or like, is this good satire, or is it heavy handed? So I mean, but sometimes they'll have a little under the radar kind of movie that comes out and is actually pretty good, but you're just kind of like, I don't know if anybody cares about this or it gets any traction. Penguin Bloom came out really early in the year. And Naomi Watts, it's based off of a true story. This woman, they're on a vacation and she falls off of this rafter that kind of breaks off, like it's like
a railing.
The railing like collapses, and so she's paralyzed. And so it's a really rich drama about healing and about like she has to overcome this bitterness, but then they kind of take in this what kind of bird is it again? It's a magpie, because it's takes place in
black
Australia.
And white bird, yeah.
And so, but they call it, the magpie is called Penguin Bloom, but it's not.
Their last name is Bloom, and they named the magpie Penguin.
They named the magpie Penguin because it kind of looks like a penguin, but it's not. So there's this, if you like sappy, weepy animal movies, like where the animal is part of the healing journey of these people, this one is like really excellent. Like it's a tearjerker. It's treacly, it's manipulative, it's all of those things.
I didn't find it heavy-handed though in that.
It wasn't heavy-handed. I did think that the writing wasn't particularly strong, but the acting really elevated it. Andrew Lincoln from The Walking Dead plays the husband, and I need some more Andrew Lincoln in my life.
Well, and it was like good. You really see her depression, because she feels like she's lost everything, even though she still has her family. And so in having to care for this animal, that's what a lot of people with depression find in caring for an animal. It lifts them out of themselves. And so I think that this tragedy that she experiences, and the healing that she has to find, the hope that she has to find in her life not being normal anymore, but having to think outside herself, I think is really powerful. Yeah. And I mean,
I don't want to give the whole thing away, but there's sort of this beauty of letting go, of like there's this scene where we're not sure if the magpies, there's kind of an attack, and we're not sure if the magpie is going to survive, and then the magpie kind of disappears, and it's sort of like, she's like, she has to learn to move on without, that this animal can't be there for her, with her forever, and that's kind of a powerful thing too, because it's not like a dog or something. It's like this exotic animal, really, that kind of just swoops in, changes everybody's life, and then they kind of have to move on without it. So that's that sort of like letting go, the process of letting go. One more that I just oh man, this movie was so good. I saw it on a lot of I was seeing it on some critics' top 10 lists, and I saw that it was on Hulu, and I saw that Mads Mikkelsen was in it. He played Hannibal Lecter in the Hannibal TV show. He's been in a ton of stuff. He was the villain in the first Doctor Strange movie. Anyway, so he was in this Danish film called Riders of Justice, and this director this director that's worked with has worked with Mads Mikkelsen on like 6 or 7 movies. So they have a really good working relationship. But like, this movie is super, super, super interesting. He's kind of this like he has a kind of a shady past, but he's like trying to like fly straight and live a and it's a Danish film, so it's it's subtitled, it's a foreign language film. um and his wife and daughter are in this train bombing, and so then the wife dies in the train bombing and the daughter survives. But it comes out that the train bombing may have been or it's not even a bombing, it's like the train crashed, like, but then there's like some like, ooh, like there's this scientist character, this mathematician guy that kind of goes into the data and says, I don't think this was an accident, because there was this mob boss that was gonna like, or this guy that was in some in organized crime that was gonna testify, and he was on the train to go testify, and like, oh, that they killed this guy, in order to, and in that attack his wife died. And so then basically they sort of approach Mads Mikkelsen's character and says, this is, they lay out all this information, and so then they put together this big team, and they're gonna go like, basically like exact revenge on this like mob. And so it presents itself as kind of a traditional revenge story, except that a lot of the guys that are in the group are like super nerdy and aren't killers, like Mads Mikkelsen's character clearly is. So they're kind of like, he's the tough guy, and they're the brains, so to speak. But they go into this, and like there's a scene where one of the guys kills someone, and he's like, he's like horrified, and he's like, he's like vomiting, and like, there's some twist in the movie where things aren't quite as they seem. It's sort of putting the pieces together. Is this the conclusion they're coming to? Maybe not. But the overall message of the movie is that violence is, that violence is, that taking a life is really not easy, and like it may not even, at the end of the day, it doesn't really solve anything for these characters. So it kind of presents itself as a revenge film, and then in the middle of that, it's a very it ultimately has a message of pacifism, of like, especially when you don't know every circumstance of a situation, that to think that you can go in and solve it by shooting people, or or murdering them, or or like threatening their families. And so it's like, it's a crazy movie. It's pretty graphic at times, but I think the ultimate, and again, you have these guys that come together in this community, and there's like a scene at the end where like the guy like plays, like, he's like, he always said he wanted to like learn how to play the French horn, and so he's playing the French horn, and it's like they're gathered at Christmas. There's a real sweetness to it, and then the relationship that his daughter has, with him as the movie goes on, and like the ways he's failed to be there for her, like emotionally. So they have to bond in this tragic circumstance, but then he's also like trying to hide from her the fact that they're like planning to like go like take revenge on these guys. But nothing works out the way that they plan it to, or the way that you expect it to happen, and that's what makes it really memorable. And I think it's a real unique take on that kind of story, and it has a lot of surprises and just really, really good performances throughout. So that one is definitely like if you're interested in anything I just said, that's on Hulu, and that's a really just a very interesting film. Very, very worth your time if you it's edgy, but it's good.
All right. Well, we got through our list of movies we wanted to talk about.
Woo!
So that was 2 hours worth.
My
so
lips are
if
my
you've
lips
made
are
it
on
to
fire.
this point, thank you so much. Yeah, I need some water. And we have some plans with someone that we're actually late for because we were finishing this video. So thank you so much for watching. And please let me know in the comments what your favorite movies were, which ones we had in common, which ones you saw that I didn't see. I know there were some that we didn't get to see this year that are getting some buzz. So especially if you're a fellow cinemaphile like my husband, and you want to comment with some movies that he missed that you think he should check out, let us know. And subscribe, because we'll be doing more of these. And this has been fun. Yeah, it's been
for
so
first
long.
time.
Yeah.
For a first time thing. I definitely don't want to sit in front of a ring light for 2 hours again. But
yeah, not 2 hours.
Except maybe once a year.
Exactly.
I'll say real quick, while you have that Apple TV subscription, the Tragedy of Macbeth just came out. You could consider it a 2021 movie or 2022 movie, but like if you have any interest in Shakespeare at all, it's phenomenal. It's the one with Denzel Washington, Frances McDormand again, directed by Joel Coen, one of the Coen brothers. Really beautiful black and white cinematography.
harkens back to like the 40s, like
yeah,
Frankenstein type movie.
The amount of, if you're a film geek, especially the amount of visual, and Coen brothers have always been super great for film nerds, but like the amount of visual references to different, you know, you have like kind of some like, yeah, almost like Frankenstein or like Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, and like for a Shakespeare adaptation, like I've never quite viewed Macbeth as a horror movie or a horror story, but this movie is like so like the atmosphere is so grim and oppressive.
Lots of mist,
so you gotta go in,
lighting.
knowing that. But I mean, I'll be talking about this one more and probably come the end of, you know, maybe the end of 2022. But it's just for like a tail end 2021 movie, like you know, it's violent and intense, just like Macbeth is. So, you know, if you like Macbeth or you have any sort of interest in Shakespeare, if you don't, you probably shouldn't watch it because it's Shakespeare.
You feel exhausted by the end,
you know, because it takes you so long to mentally switch into the way that they're talking. You know, it usually takes me half of a Shakespeare movie before I'm like, oh, okay, I understand what's going on. So, anyway.
All right. Well, thanks so much for being here, and thank you for being
You're
in
welcome.
video.
You're welcome. I love it. We will want to do this more often, I think.
All right.
I'm excited to do our we want to do a video on Disney live action remakes.
Yeah.
I feel like that one might get a little spicy, but I think we're going to agree. I mean, we've already talked about it quite a bit, so I think that would be fun to just kind of say, hey, why are these made? What's the creative impulse behind them, if any?
And what should the creative impulse be? Because I feel like there's a profound misunderstanding in a lot of them of the strength of the original, and so we'll talk about that some more.
Disney, Disney
dissect it a little more?
How can Disney get so much right and so much wrong at the same time?
We'll find out on our next video that we do together. Well, thanks so much for tuning in. Bye.
Bye.